Our story begins in 2011 when Barack Obama was still in his first term. The GTX 590 was considered top of the line. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter had detected evidence of liquid water on the red planet for the very first time. And some weird loser named Michael decided that it would be a good time to try out this Game Maker thing instead of like doing his homework or whatever. Because back in 2011, Game Maker's HTML5 edition came out for the first time. Now, fast forward 13 years to 2024, and a ton of things have changed within the Game Maker world. It got bought by Playtech, it got sold by Playtech, it got bought by Opera. Game Maker Studio 1 came out, Game Maker Studio 2 came out. We got support for things like shaders and all kinds of other weird nonsense. But if there's been one constant in the last 13 years in the world of Game Maker, it's that the HTML5 runner has never really been able to shed its reputation as being a bit of an unstable, buggy mess, to the point where it's kind of become an inside joke within the community. And there are some technical reasons why the HTML5 runner differs from the basically everything else runner, which I won't be getting into today, because starting in the November of 2024 Game Maker beta, the HTML5 runner has been officially, unofficially superseded by something new. By the way, I don't know who runs this Game Maker blog website anymore, but they are really interested in AI stuff for some weird reason. Anyway, so if you've ever played with GameMaker's HTML5 export option for more than about 5 minutes, you probably run into a few situations where code that just should work and does work on like Windows or whatever else you try to run it on just doesn't work on HTML5 for reasons unexplained. My test project for today is going to be this Plant Quest game, which is something that I'd really love to get back to working on one of these days, but I don't have time. And I'm going to run it on Windows, and as we can see, it starts and runs just fine. And we have like something resembling a game. If I were to run this on the HTML5 export, we're going to see there's a bit of a different story. So this is going to take a minute to build my game, and it is going to run it in a browser. And the game does its best to start, but it is currently so broken that I actually don't think I could even like open a JavaScript console in this browser and like debug it myself, because that's how stuck it is. I don't really feel like trying to debug this, so I'm just gonna kill that off. Dealing with HTML5 in Game Maker is just an unfathomable pain, and I like to not deal with it whenever I can avoid it. Like, it's okay, I guess, if you like run and test your game exclusively in HTML5 and you can debug problems as they come up, but if you develop your game for, say, Windows, test your game on, say, Windows, and then just try to run it on HTML5 to see what happens, it's usually varying levels of tragedy. Now, I think it was 2021, shortly after Opera first bought Game Maker, the OperaGX export appeared on the scene. Now, if you're not familiar with how OperaGX works, it is essentially Opera's answer to online games hubs of the days of old, things like Congregate or Newgrounds or Miniclip for Flash games. And it has its own special runner, which, instead of being HTML5 and JavaScript based, is based on a wonderful technology known as WebAssembly. Long story short, it's essentially a new alternative web runner for Game Maker, which has no relation whatsoever to the old and buggy HTML5 plus JavaScript. Like, I'm trying my best to be nice and not use words like monstrosity to describe the HTML5. Anyway, so this was a bit of a controversial technology at first, because in its original incarnation and for a couple of years after, it was DRM locked, so that it would only work on Opera's GX Games platform. That has since been a limitation which was lifted. It's no longer like DRM locked to work on a single site. But for the longest time, it just wasn't available as its own like standalone option that you could just upload to whatever site you wanted to, itch or your own personal website or Newgrounds or whatever. I ran Plant Quest in OperaGX, and you'll notice that it worked without complaint, which already sets it apart from Game Maker HTML5. I don't really need to like spend a lot of time in here, do I? Let's get out of there. The point is, OperaGX works so much better as a web export than the old HTML5 runner did. So what's new? So in the November of 2024 Game Maker update, or the 2024.1100 betas, if you're working with a beta, we finally now have the option when you click Build Executable. Yes, I guess I have to do that. When you click Create Executable for the gx.games target up here, you have the option to upload as a game to gx.games just automatically, upload as a live wallpaper mod, upload as a game strip mod, or save locally as a zip. This last one is new. If I were to click that, GameMaker will build a standalone version of the game. And now instead of giving us the option to like upload the game to the gx.games hub or something related to that for the other options, it's going to give us the option to save a zip. And when we do that, this will give us a standalone version of the game that we can upload as we would have with like an HTML5 build of the game. We can upload this to itch or our own website or Newgrounds or whatever, and it will just work. And it will work much better than the GameMaker HTML5 runner did. You can open up the zip and you can look through it. It's got an index.html inside, so if you run it on a web server, it should just work. You might also notice that the data wad is game.unx, which is usually reserved for Linux builds of the game, as opposed to data.win or I think data.mac is for Apple computers. So that's mildly interesting. Anyway, this is 100 megabytes. Most of that is audio. If I were to go, for example, to itch.io, and if I were to go, say, edit game, and if I were to go and upload, let's copy the file path there, upload that zip. That's going to take a minute. I can set the classification, or the kind of project rather, to HTML5 so that we can set a file to be playable in the browser. And when we do this, it's going to take a minute to upload because it is 100 megabytes of mostly audio. Down here in the embed options, I'm going to manually set the viewport dimensions to 1366 by 768 because smaller sizes have a little bit of trouble running this game with the amount of like UI on the screen and stuff. This is almost done. This is really taking its time, isn't it? All right, let's say check the box that says this file will be played in the browser. We can save this. We can view page, and now there's did I upload the wrong file, or is it just taking a minute to process? I definitely just checked the wrong box for this file would be playable in the browser. I want to check the box of the file that I actually just uploaded. Let's try that again. I had one job when I did this demo. All right, there we go. So we can now click run the game, and it's going to show some Opera like debug stuff at the bottom, some GX debug stuff at the bottom. But after that, it will start. It will load. We can start at the title screen. There's a bit of a graphical bug at the bottom with that screen overly not like filling the entire screen. But other than that, this works. I have not thoroughly tested this on the GX Games export, so I'm not like, oops. I feel like I'm not, like, I'm tabbed into the game, but I don't actually have control of it, which is a little weird. Like, I can't drive keyboard input to it, and mouse lock isn't actually staying mouse locked, which I'm not sure if, I think that's an itch problem because it was working yesterday when I was testing this out. Anyway, also the audio stopped. Anyway, the point of all this is that the OperaGX export works a lot better than the GameMaker HTML5 export ever did, and I foresee that for most people who want to make web games, this is the way forward, just automatic, immediately, starting right now, no questions asked. I know that there's a couple of people who have been working on long-term projects in HTML5, and I expect that, like, if you're somewhat far along in one of those, you probably don't want to move over, you probably want to use the codebase and runner that you're familiar with, even if it is weird and buggy. And you probably don't want to spend like a tremendous amount of time like doing QA testing on a game that's already largely finished in OperaGX. Although for what it's worth, it would be a lot easier to go in that direction than it would be to go in the other direction. I don't really have much more to say about this. If you want to play this game for yourself, Houseplant Quest, as prototypical and unfinished as it is, I will have a link to that down in the description of the video. After Wizarducks and the Lost Hat is finished, I do want to take like another month or two and just like really make more progress on this. Among other things, by the way, Scribble works a lot better in GameMaker's, oh, now it's working since I, like, left the browser and came back to it. Scribble works a lot better in the OperaGX runner than it ever did in HTML5 for various reasons. So if you have a game that you weren't able to port to web because it used something like Scribble, then now it should be a lot easier. This is a music player, and I greatly enjoyed making the record on top of that turntable spin phonograph. Anyway, enough of that. By the way, as far as performance goes, I've noticed quite a bit of variability in how well performance in the GameMaker HTML5 runner works, and I largely chalk that up to the fact that, like, Chromium's V8 JavaScript engine might or might not be very good at particular things, better even than the runner elsewhere in GameMaker, whereas it might also be, like, a lot worse at certain things than the runner elsewhere in GameMaker. So I don't want to make any, like, solid claims about performance of gx.games over HTML5. When I was testing stuff earlier, I noticed that, like, again, there was a lot of variability in how well HTML5 performs versus other platforms. That said, I've also never played around with the GX Games YYC export, so that probably would give you a nice boost for the same reasons that YYC does in, like, on Windows. Anyway, that's enough for me for now. Let me know if you have any interesting plans for web games now that we can, like, do this, and now that we can make web games in GameMaker without weird arcane issues. I'm definitely going to play around with it more myself. So, my name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. GameMaker 2024.11. It's looking pretty good. It added some cool things. You should all go check out Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is the game that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Link to the Steam page can be found down below. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, VitroV, Squarecrow, SpyDie Games, Manta Ray, GameMaker, Edward Holt, and DJ Gibbles for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.